Good afternoon, everyone. All right, is it working okay? Yep, it is. All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to Bloomington Rotary Club's celebration of service every week. My name's Tracy Ivanovich. I'm thrilled and honored to serve as your president. Thought for the day. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this. I'm sure probably at least half are, but I thought all of us should be. The canceling of student visas and forcing some of these kids to return home immediately is chilling. One of the cornerstones of a strong education is working with and learning from people of other cultures. It pushes kids to be better and to think broader. At the risk of sounding somewhat melodramatic, I feel this is a travesty, and I'm actually encouraged to see Harvard standing up for what they believe in, and I hope to see more of that. And on that note, no pressure, Aaron, but it's the reflection from you.
Thank you, President Tracy. I'd like to start, I know you're all eating, but I'd like all of those who have served on the board of directors or as an officer of this club to stand. Or raise your hand. Right. So, thank you. This is a club of leaders and leaders among leaders. So thank you for all for your service. As with most Rotary Club presidents, my journey began long before my term. I first served as secretary of the club and a board member for several years. Being president of this club is a unique and intense experience. It is also often driven by the times and not by the person. Mike Baker was president from 2017 to 18, and his remarkable term was driven largely by our club's outstanding centennial celebration, attended by the international president of Rotary. Following Mike was Lauren Snyder, who was relatively new to the club, but had Rotary experience and embraced the presidency when our president-elect became ill and had to withdraw. Lauren did a remarkable job, even though his high-power career was taking off at the same time and his first child was on the way. And following my term, which was 2019 to 2020, Ashley Wesley still faced COVID during times in which she was very admirably leading our club. I became president under Lauren Snyder, who was the youngest person to serve as president at the time. I later became the second oldest to serve as president. What we all had in common was our commitment to serve the club and our community with kindness and compassion, but also with vision and openness to change so that our club.
Technical difficulties, just hold it.
So that our club. So that our club. So that our club.
I'm dying to know what our club.
Well, maybe our club. Maybe it was another club. I don't know. So that our club can be effective and an important part of our larger community. Under Lauren, we launched a new international water project, moved towards organizational memberships, designed our new style of membership badges, and created a loose leaf member directory. That is also the time when we started referring to our meetings as celebrations of service. It is important to note that club presidents have access to a lot of help, support, and encouragement from other officers, board members, committee chairs, past presidents, especially past presidents, district officers, and club members, all of whom are volunteers, and from our exceptional executive assistant, Natalie Blaze. Who was relatively new during my term. But as anyone will tell you, the buck stops with the club president, and change doesn't happen smoothly without the president's leadership. With that background, I'd like to outline some of the other highlights from 2019 and 2020, from Lauren Snyder's term through my term and into Ashley Sullivan's term. Working with Lauren Snyder and Ashley Sullivan was a privilege and a pleasure. In a volunteer organization, it takes time for ideas to get developed, discussed, tested, and potentially adopted. So it is vital that all the leadership get onto the same page, including highly engaged past presidents. So what challenges and opportunities did the times present us with, and what did our club accomplish? Our club had a long-standing traditional practice of billing all members for every meal at every meeting, regardless of whether they attended or not. There was a traditional Rotary understanding that members were responsible for attending every week. Some of us felt that this way of thinking was making the club unappealing to younger prospective members, especially those who were not being sponsored by their employers, which had more often been the case in the past. We gradually chipped away at the old attendance requirements while still respecting those who valued perfect attendance. We felt that the club needed to accept the need to be more welcoming and attractive to younger and more diverse members, including those with young families and otherwise busy lives. We wanted to bring in more energy and enthusiasm to make the club look and feel more like the larger community we serve. During Lauren Snyder's term, we moved toward changes in our membership policies, considering organizational memberships as well as under 35 and family dues arrangements. These were new and controversial changes, but we moved slowly and deliberately, waiting for consensus to build. And it worked. The club began to be more open to change. We started exploring relationships with local companies, nonprofits, and governmental units. It took some time, but here we are. We have been building relationships with others in the community, lowering barriers to membership and participation. We built a positive and caring relationship with IU students interested in developing a Rotaract club on campus, redeveloping. We hosted students at meetings, social events, and training programs in our district and funded a display banner for their meetings. We encouraged high school leaders toward Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, RYLA, and club members to attend the Rotary Leadership Institute and district conferences. And here we are today. We continued and expanded service projects, including international projects, district projects, and restarted a cleanup project on Pete Ellis Drive. Jim Bright and Alan Barker led communications efforts to increase the club's visibility in our community and through the Herald, the HT, and social media. We moved our club website from an unreliable contractor over to the popular Rotary vendor DACDB. We upgraded our accounting and banking systems. You know, this is boring. This is sort of a deep dive into what the board and the members, deal with. A lot of times so that nobody else has to. And of course, COVID hit. At first, everyone thought we could continue meeting in person by wearing masks and not shaking hands. Member Mike Wade became my health science advisor at that time. But the pandemic took over. By March of 2020, life was changing. 1 week after we were notified that the IMU would be closed to all outside meetings, we held a limited trial club meeting on Zoom, thanks to the intense efforts of Alan Barker and Michael Shermis. Just remarkable efforts and dedication. The following week, our weekly club celebration of service was on Zoom. We were among the first clubs to make this transition. We also had informal Zoom gatherings for club members to discuss and process what was going on. At the same time, we started talking about continuing with hybrid meetings even after COVID restrictions were lifted. Now, I'm going to yield the rest of my time, which I already spent. And thank you, Tracy. And I will make this available to the members. Okay.
Thank you, Aaron, and very timely. As you all may or may not know, we are looking for a new president-elect, and we need some help on that front. So if that's something you'd be interested in, we need some good leaders here. So please see myself, Ron, Sally, or Alon. All right. With that, Marilyn, if you could introduce our guests.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome 6 guests we have today. The first is Sarah Greenwell, a guest of Jim Bright. And if you would stand, we would love to give you a proper welcome. Next, we have Bob Bernecki, guest of Tim Jessen. Laura Stokowski, a guest of Katie Ciernak. And 3 Rotaract guests, Yaya Kader, Basit Ali, and June Wen. Anyone online?
Nope, we're all Rotarians.
Oh, well, I'm gonna let you know on that one. I'm very happy to have everyone here today. Please ask around if you'd like to have any other information about Rotary.
All right, we just had a special guest arrive, Sarah and baby Cochran. Congratulations. That is awesome. So, all right. Birthdays, ironically, Sarah Cochran yesterday, Whitney Cordoba on the 19th, Kay Leach on the 15th, Megan Neese on the 13th, and Mark on the 17th. For anniversaries, Marilyn, 10 years. That's awesome. All right, from announcements, I just have one announcement. Connie Shakalis wrote a beautiful article in the HT on the Psychedelic Fest Mind and referenced our own Joy Harder and Craig Spence on the 414 edition. It is a festival that celebrates psychedelic advancements through film. There will not be drugs there. And it will be at the Buzzkirk Chumley. I know, now you're not going. At the Buzzkirk Chumley at 419 at 1 o'clock. And then the final event will be at 9 p.m. So something excellent to take a look at. And with that, I will have Michael Shermis come up and introduce our program.
All right, thanks, Tracy. Virgil Sauder has worked in the animal welfare field for the last 23 years. He started as the shelter manager for the city in 2005 and became the director of animal care and control in 2015. Over the years, he's worked with staff and volunteers to move the agency to align with best practices in the field. This has led to dramatic decreases in euthanasia rates and moved the animal shelter to a successful adoption agency. When not working for the city, Virgil can be found working in his garden, hiking, or volunteering with Global Gifts. And I know Virgil from the time that I'm help coordinate accessibility issues at the city, and the animal care shelter is one of the few places at the city that's fully accessible. So I've had great interactions with him over there. He's known throughout the city community and the staff as somebody who is really caring about animals, and so I'm happy to have Virgil. And if you give him a warm Rotary welcome.
Thanks for that introduction. Can everybody hear me okay? We're good? All right. So, get my tech going. I figured I'd give just kind of a quick, short discussion on animal welfare in our community and how animal care control fits into that. and then hopefully that sparks some discussion. So I hear you guys like to ask questions, and I love to be asked questions. So hopefully we can have some good discussion there. I want to start off with a quote that I like from Albert Einstein. The indifference, callousness, and contempt that so many people exhibit towards animals is evil first because it results in great suffering in animals. And a battery is running low somewhere. Okay, I'll step over. I have it here. I can keep, so it's evil first because it results in great suffering in animals, and second because it results in an incalculable great impoverishment to the human spirit. I like this for one reason, in that it kind of identifies the human-animal bond, which is very important to what I do. It's at the center of what we do with animal control. It's the center of what we do with the shelter. The other reason I like this is for what it is not. The majority of animal welfare and animal welfare challenges do not have anything to do with this quote. They're primarily about resources. When it comes to animal welfare challenges in our community, housing is a big challenge, finding animal accessible housing and affordable housing for people. Access to veterinary care, both due to the lack of veterinary availability. If you think or have heard nationally, we have a shortage of veterinarians that we're starting to see signs early that that's going to be overcome, but we're going to have a gap of probably 5 to 10 years where we're going to continue to be short. So that's causing problems in our community. The cost of vet care is going way up, which makes it very inaccessible for a large portion of the community. And then just simple things like overpopulation with access to spay-neuter services or unwanted and uncared for animals. This diagram is how I think about how problems are solved in our community. The triangle goes from how most problems are solved to kind of where we're at with animal care in the bottom. Family and friends are the biggest resources for people struggling. After that, their neighbors chip in to help. Our community organizations, by these I'm talking about our nonprofits in town. If you've Bloomington Pets Alive is a great resource for people to get access to spay-neuter services. Monroe County Humane Association for low-cost vet care. Feral Cat Friends for help with the feral population. Wild Care for wildlife are just some of numerous agencies in the town. When those agencies can't help or people have issues connecting, then animal care and control is at the bottom. We are the stopgap. We are the last line of defense for animals and people getting care in our community. So we are a division of the City of Bloomington's Public Works Department. We provide animal control assistance for the city residents. If you live outside the city residents, animal control is handled through the Sheriff's Department. And then we also operate the City of Bloomington Animal Shelter, which houses all animals in Monroe County. Our mission is to address and respond to all animal needs in the community through education, enforcement, support, in order to build a community where animals are valued and treated with kindness and respect. And that's a great mission, and this is a great community to do it with. I say when I go out and meet nationally with other groups, I wouldn't want to do animal control in any other community because we have so much good support in Monroe County. So half of what we do is animal control. I don't know how many of you have had interactions with our animal control officers. These are pictures of our fine officers. It is Animal Control Appreciation Week, so if you do see them, make sure you wave and thank them for what they do. Half of what we do is public safety. So any dangerous or aggressive animal issues we deal with, as well as rabies monitoring for the state and the State Board of Health. And then for animal welfare, we investigate in cruelty, neglect, and animal care cases, also permit various kennels in town and chicken flocks, and then education and support. When I think about what my animal control officers do on a daily basis, this is the balancing act they do with everything that they involve with, is balancing empathy with enforcement of the city code. When we go back to the problems that people face, rarely is it somebody just truly abusing an animal. Rarely are we going with somebody that wants to neglect or ignore an animal. Usually it's a matter of resources and connections. So they need that empathy to solve problems and make sure that the continued issue doesn't happen again. And doing that, there's always a time where you work and you need to come down on the enforcement side. So they're constantly walking that line between the two. The second thing we do is the animal shelter. This is our brand new mural up front at the animal shelter when you walk in the door. This was done by an IU group, so I wanted to share this today since we are in IU. It's a art service group with the college. This is my description of what the animal shelter is like. You might be wondering why a sink that's overflowing with water. Any shelter deals with the need of animals coming in and the animals going out. If you can't get animals in the door, your shelters bursts open. How shelters deal with that? Some shelters shut off the tap and don't let more in. Others try to moderate the tap or open the flow to let more animals out. At Bloomington Animal Shelter, we navigate both of those things. We have, so I'll kind of go into the different programs we do to do that. So when you're looking at issues of what, no kill versus euthanasia shelters, when open door shelters versus private shelters, it all comes down to this image here. We're trying to figure out the flow of animals to provide the best care of animals in the shelter, and there's a variety of ways to do that. Our shelter takes in about 3,400 animals a year. As far as how many animals are in our care at any one time, it's at the best end, 180 up to 350. During the summer months when our kittens come in the door. I also just want to point out we don't always just take in cats and dogs. We get in a little bit of everything. See, these are some of the residents we've had come through the shelter. Half of all of our intake are owned animals. These are animals where individuals can either no longer afford or having issues with housing and so can no longer take care of them, or just have animals that they cannot control or have issues with. They come into our shelter. So our efforts at handling this problem starts before the animals even enter the door. We provide supplies where we can, when our community partners can't, provide education. We offer free training and advice, and also rehoming assistance. So one of the things we do if people need to rehome their animal is we advertise them on our site and kind of help promote them so they don't even have to come in the shelter's doors. So that's one of the ways we try to close that tap off a little bit. I think my picture disappeared. So we have some various life-saving programs to get the animals out the door. We have a very robust lost and found group with some volunteers that are on Facebook and troll different sites to make those matches to get the animals out the door as soon as possible. Open adoptions is a concept where at the very heart of this philosophy is that anybody who enters your door deserves to leave with an animal. And that takes a lot of trust and a lot of working with people. Of course, there are, we do animal control, so we do know that's not 100% true. There are a couple that we don't want to leave with animals, but for the most part, if somebody comes in to adopt an animal, we're going to work with them to find a good fit so that they can leave with something. Club Underdog is one of our programs that works with a small group of staff and volunteers to provide extra support. The majority of dogs that enter the shelter are juveniles with very little training. And if you can imagine, if you were stuck in a shelter where you get out of the kennel maybe an hour a day, and you hear sights, smells, and noises 24 hours a day, it's very difficult. And so this program provides support so that they can maintain a quality of life while they're there and hopefully get out of the door sooner. As with Richmond activities, we do offer post-adoption support as well. We have some of these in the audience, so thank you. Our shelter volunteers and our foster families are truly the backbone of our organization. We have 20 21 now paid staff, with some seasonal employees as well, which is not nearly enough to handle the 3,800 animals we get in a year. So our volunteers and our foster families make that happen. Our foster families also allow us to expand that sink. So when we're getting those large numbers of kittens in, they can go into a foster family, get care, and then get adopted. So it helps manage our numbers a lot. The city provides us an excellent budget to take care of animals, but it is not enough for all of our special needs. So if those who aren't able to help in the shelter, we do take in financial donations. The financial donations that come in the shelter are there for broken limbs, heartworm treatment, things that are above the routine spay, neuter, adoption, get them out the door. So if you want to help us, again, help spread the message to spay, neuter your pets. If you're not responsibly breeding and have people lined up for the animals, there's no need to add more to our population. Microchipping is a great resource too. Every animal that comes in the shelter that's microchipped, the first thing we do is scan that chip, try to trace it back to the owner. Our officers will actually deliver it to your door if we can get a hold of you. So, you know, we don't want them in our shelter any more than you want your pets in our shelter. So we're working to get that out. And then, of course, adopt. If you have a space in your home, come see me. I have lots for you. So I said I'd be quick. Hopefully that was a good time. I know there's a lot that goes with animal welfare and a lot we do at animal control, and there's a lot that I could have put into this that I did not. So I'm hoping you have some good questions for me. I will say I did put my email and phone number up here as well, so I'm more than happy to take calls as well if there's something happens later. We got lots of questions. Should I call on people or so? Oh, there we go.
I got it.
Okay.
First, I want to say that I've known Virgil and his wife since they came to town. This is intended as a very friendly question, but it's going to be a hard one.
Thanks,
You
Tim.
have a divinity school background and you're very steeped in Mennonite theology and peacemaking. This is my question. We see an increase in violence throughout our society today, including the governor of Pennsylvania, while at a Seder Passover dinner, his house is set fire by arson. The Director of Homeland Security is known for killing dogs. Do you think the emphasis and the increasing violence in society contributes to abuse and cruelty to animals?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, I could not say anything but yes. I mean, when we have stressful events in society, like during COVID, when people were stuck at home, didn't know what was going on, we saw an increase in calls coming in the shelter. When we deal with people in the field for animal control calls that have anger issues, it does escalate during those times. I mean, it does happen. And yeah, it's stress in society leads to stress in the animals. I talked about 50% of the animals coming to the shelter are owner surrenders too. And when people don't know where their next meal is coming from, they don't have the financial security, they have the stress that we all feel, even when we're secure, what's happening nationally, that increases the need and desire to get those animals out. And so we have seen over the last couple of years an escalating need for people to find new homes for their animals. So hopefully that answers your question a bit, but.
Do you spay and neuter every animal that comes through the shelter? And if so, I want to hear about the snakes and the rats and the birds.
We currently spay neuter all cats, dogs, and rabbits. Those are, per our city ordinance, the ones that need to be spayed and neutered. We don't currently spay neuter our pocket pets or our snakes. And part of the reason that those animals were chosen is because of the numbers that are coming through. We get maybe 2 snakes a year, sometimes 3, but we do get them. So we don't have that kind of overpopulation need at this time for those.
So am I getting this right? You no longer euthanize animals?
That's an excellent question. So we do euthanize. When it comes to the question of whether the City of Bloomington Animal Shelter is a kill versus a no-kill shelter, I will never choose one of those definitions over the other. We will always euthanize animals because if nothing else, we do animal control. So we get animals in, and mostly dogs, that are not safe or sound to go back out in the community, and we do euthanize those. We also deal with the hard things like hit by car animals that we euthanize for. Our euthanasia rate for the last 6+ years has been around 7% or less. So we have a life-saving rate of 95% of animals walking out our doors, which is really good and where I want to be as an animal control agency.
Thank you for being here and for sharing all this. I have a question. My curiosity is, I know during the pandemic, there was a sharp increase in pet ownership. People were adopting and purchasing animals. Did you see a corresponding increase in the subsequent year or so of people wanting to give up those animals because they weren't quite ready to be pet owners?
That's an excellent question. So if you look at my intake levels, we did see an increase post pandemic. However, if you broaden that out, what you saw was a decrease over time at a more gentle curve, where we're now on the other end. So where we're at now with our intake levels, we've kind of come back up where I would expect from 2019 numbers to be continuing to drop lower. Are they going to continue to rise? Not sure, but we're still below where we were at 2019.
This is a sales pitch for the foster family program. Dawn and I and our 2 daughters started fostering probably 15, 20 years ago when the program pretty much began. And I think a lot of us are of an age where we probably grew up having a litter of kittens around or puppies. Well, that wasn't going to happen at our house, but we figured out a way to satisfy their yayas. So there were times when they were sleeping in the basement with puppies because they didn't want to separate from them. By about the 3rd day with all the poop, they were ready to go back to their beds. But it has even continued on now that my children are adults. In fact, I have one grand cat. It was a discount cat. It was 25% off because when Kate got it, its leg was broken. And because she has EMT training, she has had things where she's had to give them shots for diabetes and taking care of this cat that was injured. And as another level of that, if you're older and you're making that decision whether you want another pet because you're traveling, the foster program, if you sign up, might be a way for you to have a dog for a week or 2 weeks or a month, and then take it back and be able to do your travels. So if you're on that borderline of whether you want another pet, Virgil's got a great deal for you.
Thank you for that plug, and thank you for all the years you've helped us out. Yes, no, our foster program is one of my favorite parts of the shelter. And it is true that if you only have a few days to a week up to, we have animals that have been fostered for over a year. So it's just, we work with you and what your needs are and get them out of the shelter.
50 years ago, when I ran for city council, there was a huge debate between 2 animal interest groups. I mean, it was really it was very difficult. And now there are more groups, and I wonder how these groups get along. Is that a peaceful relationship and a helpful relationship?
That is an excellent question. So currently we have a good group. We do get along fairly well. Do we agree on everything? No. But we've all come to an understanding of things. When I first started, there was a little bit of the one I like to talk about is there was a little bit of kind of pressure and mistrust between feral cat friends and the shelter because of very different operating philosophies, different perspectives. But over time, we've worked together to strengthen things. And it's, yeah, there's not one way to do it. Being in animal control and dealing with animal welfare issues gives you a different perspective because, again, we're there for safety of people as much as we are there for the welfare of animals. And you have groups that are just there for the welfare of animals and that individual animal. And so there are sometimes that we disagree with the bigger questions, but we all have a decent working relationship.
Just wanted to check really quickly. Do we have any questions online?
Yes, we do. So first I have a question from Caleb, and it says, what's the most exotic animal that you have come across in Bloomington?
The alligators. We had a couple of caimans that were found in a bathtub that we had to bring to the shelter, temporarily house, and then get to a rescue.
How big were they?
Nose to tail. They were young ones, but yeah.
Okay, I have a second one. It says from Megan, I'm curious if how you partner with the university. With so many students and so many animals in need, are there any programs to connect what you do with the population of students?
Yeah, so again, you know, I talked about being in Bloomington being a great place to do animal care and control, to do an animal shelter because of the support we have in the community. That's also very true of IU. IU students make up a large portion of our volunteers at the shelter. They also make up a large portion of our fosters that we have throughout the year. And that's actually growing with the fosters. While we're on that topic of students, people always ask me if we see more surrenders from students and more surrenders adoptions. Honestly, it's no different than any other group of people. You have about the exact same percentage of people taking perfect care of pets, or even better than what I would take care of my pets, and those that can't do it or figure out that they need to surrender as they move. So yeah, we have no problem adopting to students, and we just talk through the realities of what it is to own a pet and what's going to be destroyed when you take that puppy home.
And one more, this one's from me. As I'm actively looking for a pet, I noticed that there are nonprofits that are working with shelters to see if the dogs can be service dogs. What are your thoughts on that? And does the shelter look at participating?
Yeah, so so we don't currently have a relationship with any kind of trainers that work with service dogs. Service dogs needs to be trained for a specific task, and we have a lot of animals that come through that can be done with that. We just don't have a relationship for somebody to do that. Also, the reality in the shelter is that because we have so many coming in the doors, we don't have a good way to keep animals and to work with them necessarily to train for those tasks. I'd be more than happy to partner with a group if there's anybody looking for that. So if you know a connection of trainers, we'd be happy to work with them.
Medical mutts.
Okay, I have both a testimonial and a question. So my wife and I have been foster parents or fosters for kittens, and we had took 3 2-week-old gray tabby kitties from as a foster. We failed at that because we kept 2 of them and only one went back at the end. But the testimonial I want to say is, they were not, a couple of them were not in the best health because they were so young. And I wanted to say how great it was working with the staff there, to pull out the stops to make sure that they all survived and thrived. So that is a happy story. So on the question, you mentioned about the shortage of veterinary services in Bloomington. So what would you advise a new pet owner to do in terms of primary care for their pets if they, are told that they can't be seen by a local vet or become a patient of a local vet for 6 months or a year or whatever?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So there are a few. I'll call them workarounds. So just like you with your own health, always recommend getting a primary physician. So always try to get in at a vet and get that relationship set up. However, when it comes to pets, when it comes to basic needs like vaccines, those types of things, there are groups that come into town, and also like Pets Alive has vaccine clinics where you can get your rabies done and the basic core vaccines. So making sure those are updated while you're waiting to get in your vet is you can do through those agencies. So I would recommend doing that. But the reality is also if the pet's healthy and you can wait, just make that appointment 6 months out the road and wait for it to come down, if that makes sense for you. I am hoping in Indiana we see a lot more telehealth stuff come with vets. It is something that is growing, and it is something in other states that it's really kind of taking off. So hopefully that will kind of help fill in the gaps when it comes to the vet care stuff. As far as emergency clinics, we still, the only true emergency clinics we have are still in Indianapolis to take your pets to. So if you just make sure you're aware of that in the case of any emergency. So.
Hi, Virgil. 11 years ago, we adopted 2 kittens from the animal shelter. And it's true that you do run a good bargain, because I'll never forget you saying 11 years ago, if you adopt one sister, you'll waive the adoption fee for the second. And so we adopted both sisters. But my question for you is this, along with supporting our local animal organizations, I also support others around Indiana and nationally. And one is Best Friends in Kanab, Utah. And I know in 2016, they had made a pledge that by 2025, the nation would be kill-free. And, here we are, it's 2025. And I wanted to ask you, number one, to what extent do you think that's achievable? And what would that take? What would it look like? And then second of all, does our animal shelter ever partner with organizations like that? Thank you.
Yeah. No, that's a excellent question. So so there's a couple things. So Best Friends does a lot of support for shelters and programming and education. So they are definitely one of the groups that I look to when it comes to best practices or opportunities for best practices and learning programs. We are, when it comes to the no-kill promise, Best Friends calls any shelter basically with a euthanasia rate of 10% or below no kill. So according to their calculations, we were in that boat. So that's kind of our relationship with Best Friends. The question of whether it's possible to get to a no-kill nation or not is much harder and much more difficult. And the reason I say that is because if it's done poorly and your programs are done poorly, there are negative effects in the community. We are seeing that a lot in Indianapolis currently. They've had a lot of struggles with animal care and control. And Best Friends came there to kind of help them get some programming around. And so they decreased the amount of animals coming in. If you pick up a stray and go down to the shelter currently, that you might not be able to drop off the stray at Indiana Animal Care and Control. So they're seeing a lot more animals roaming the streets, a lot more dying on the streets. So when it comes to thinking about a no-kill nation and a shelter, the percentages and of euthanasia in shelters is one thing, but really good sheltering has to do with the community, and it's looking at the community needs. And so I appreciate what they're trying to do, but I'm also, as an animal control agency, a little nervous and hesitant about it.
Thank you so much for an informative presentation. I'd like to ask you 2 off the subject questions. Are you the person people to call if you see a dead or injured deer? That's the first one. And the second one is about how you cope with hoarding.
So the first question is, yes, we are the people. So we have in the city, we got the short end of the straw where we pick up dead animals off our roadway, and we also do remove deer from people's yards as well. So if you see a deceased deer, call us. We also deal with any kind of injured, aggressive, or ill wildlife calls. So we will go out and evaluate those and figure out what needs to do. When it comes to wildlife, our first, I was going to say do no harm, but it's not quite do no harm. But if they're able to live, we let them go, even with some injuries that may look difficult. It's surprising what they can deal with, because our option, when especially with deer, is either they live or they die. There's not a lot of rehab issues in between. So that's that question. And I just blanked on your second question. Hoarding. So we deal at the shelter with hoarding on a daily basis. So, I jokingly say that, but we do, because we're always full, and we ourselves have to look at what we're doing and whether we are actually hoarding or helping the animals in our care. In the community, when we deal with hoarding issues, we do go and look at the situation, and if we do need to seize them, we do seize the animals from people that are hoarding too many. It comes down to a care issue, and there is number issues. So according to the city ordinance, you can't have more than 15 animals, cats and dogs combined, in your home, even with a permit. So you can have up to that number if you have a proper permitting, which we inspect. So that's kind of that's a really quick explanation of how we deal with hoarding. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, 15 is a high number. Again, we start a permitting process with anybody more than 4 dogs and more than 6 cats. You do have to have a permit, and that allows us to inspect to make sure they're being cared for well. We have 1 person currently in the city with a permit. So most people are under.
So my question is maybe about the future. Are there things that you haven't been able to do, you'd like to be able to do to make your organization even better, or where are you at with that?
That's a excellent question. So it goes back to the first question we had today. Honestly, when I look at the future these days, I am more fearful about having to go back in time to programs to maintain what we're doing. Nationally, we are seeing all shelters with an increase of animals coming in their doors, an increase of people who aren't able to house them or care for them, an increased number of animals and litters coming in the door. So I have more fear that is working on programs to mitigate that, so we don't have to go back, than to expand into the future.
Thank you. Virgil, are you all experiencing any of the federal funding concerns? Or are you purely local?
We are purely local, paid out of the city's general fund with taxpayer dollars. So that's as long as property taxes come in, we'll be fine. If property taxes change, which they're possibly doing, that's going to be a bit unknown what the city is able to do, and we might have to adjust based on that.
Yeah, I hadn't realized that animal control does ghost busting. We put in a call. We had some weird noises coming from our chimney and our fireplace, and we made a call, and people came out really quickly and found out, there was a bird trapped in there, and they were able to help us get the bird out, just liberated open the screen door and open the baffle. And that was really helpful. And I'm sure you do a lot of, mystery work, like, hey, what's that sound up there, in the rafters? So, but thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, I try to, when we're talking with our animal control officers and talking to new animal control officers, I do like to tell them, when you go into a call, expect everything and ask lots of questions because you don't know what you're going to deal with.
I'm very interested in the chicken program, and so tell us about the history of that and sort of what kinds of issues are there. That's not necessarily a household pet now, but it's becoming one maybe.
So I mean, some people do have chickens as household pets. Some people have them as livestock. So the permitting of chicken flocks was originally an exemption from a zoning ordinance to have basically livestock in a smaller lot in your backyard. And the goal of that is to become, is part of this sustainability initiative, so you can raise eggs in your backyard. If you want to raise meat birds, you can, up to 5 hens, no roosters, no ducks currently. So as far as issues with that, we really don't experience a lot of issues. Every so often, it's mostly, again, a lot of it's people who get flocks and don't understand the permitting process, in which case we just walk them through it. And occasionally there's individuals who let them roam, and then we have to deal with that. But for the most part, we don't have issues with our chicken flocks, and it's something. Every year we have between 20 and 25 flocks permitted, and I don't have the exact figure, but there's maybe half of those are continue year after year. The others are 1 year, they decide it's too much work, they leave, new people come on. It's a little bit of a revolving door with that.
So I grew up with watching Bob Barker on Price is Right saying, "Don't forget to spay and neuter your pets." And I learned that before I even had a pet. And so as I became an adult, it just was natural for me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to spay or neuter my pet. So I'm sure that had some influence over a population. But I wonder if there's other initiatives that could influence folks to get that done.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a good thing to think about. I grew up with Bob Barker too. I mean, spay neuter your pets was pushed in you. When it comes to spay neuter issues or adoption issues in the shelter, we are kind of a victim of our success nationally as well when it comes to adoption. There was is that my phone? There used to be a lot of funding for spay neuter nationally. There used to be a lot of funding for adoptions nationally to kind of get shelters to no-kill status, to push adoptions. We went through a whole period of time where people were doing that and shelters became very successful. So we're like, oh, let's focus on other things. And we stopped saying that message. And we're now in a time where that message is no longer out there and we're seeing the effects of it. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of a little bit behind, and it's something we need to focus more on.
Thank you, Virgil. That was so interesting. I have a million questions. I'll ask one. For the last 9 years, our next door neighbor has been spending thousands and thousands of dollars feeding the deer right on the ground, right outside of our fence. And it attracts coyotes and foxes, but the main problem is the deer. Now, because we're not in the city limits, we're just outside in Monroe County, there's nothing we can do, right?
I'm not aware of any. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not aware of any ordinance in Monroe County. The only thing that might help you, they're probably not hunters if they're feeding deer, are they? So yeah, I mean the reason I ask is there are state laws for feeding that go with hunting season. So, but I'm guessing they're not doing it for that. They're just doing it for enjoyment. Deer in Bloomington, this is the ideal place for them. I mean, there's lots of fun things to eat. There's lots of cover and open areas. So yeah, it's something that we struggle with. And we're hoping the feeding ban in Bloomington helps. It's early days yet, and there's lots of deer that need to change their routines too. So we haven't seen huge differences in our flocks in Bloomington. I hope you can have conversations with your neighbor and encourage them to feed elsewhere or stop. Our procedure when it comes to any kind of wildlife is just let them be wild. It's, you know, whether it's feeding the birds outside your window, feeding the deer, don't get them habituated to your food because it can cause lots of other problems.
Told you there'd be lots of questions, and there were. So thank you so much for taking all of those. And can't wait for the day you guys spay and neuter the deer. Just saying. And in honor of your program, there will be a donation of $100 for the quarter that will go to the Bloomington Symphony. I'd like to acknowledge all of those. Oh, that's so cute. And I'm so glad it's not me. Natalie, thank you for all your work as our executive assistant as always. Carol Ann, thank you for stepping up and greeting everyone. Marilyn, thank you for introducing all of our guests. Leslie, thank you for stepping up at the last minute for Zoom host, and then Aaron for the wonderful reflection. And we will have that linked in at the roundabout. Mr. Bright, thank you for reporting, much appreciated. And Sam, thank you for stepping up and running the mic. And then of course, Isaac, thank you as always for the camera and audio. And boy, that was an interesting adaptation throughout the day. Our next meeting, okay, everybody ready? Our next meeting will be at the Waldron. Oh my gosh, really? How exciting is that? So we got a free thing and we get to use it. We will be eating in the main level where all the art is, and then we will go down into the fire bay. That sounds so exciting. We're going to go down into the fire bay and hold our regular meeting. So there is parking. It's like 50 cents an hour in the garage right across the street. This is when we embrace change. Remember, Aaron talked about it. Everybody remember that. So you're not going to be able to go up the escalators to see where the flags are because they're going to be at the Waldron. All right. We will, our program, did I not put that in here? Exodus, yes, I did. Our speaker will be Sarah Owen from Exodus, who manages the refugee program here in Bloomington. I'm sure we'll have a bajillion questions for her as well, given the times we are in. So with that, Isaac, if you could put the four-way test up, and everyone who is able to stand, please join me. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, is it fun?